All right, today we are diving into a really cool, kind of hidden history. We're talking about the story of four rival companies that, way before the cloud was even a thing, literally wrote the rulebook for how you run the internet. This is a story about how entire empires were built, not on land, but on code.
It's this incredible tale of brilliant innovation, but also, absolutely ruthless competition. We're talking colossal ambition that shaped the digital world that you and I live in right now. So the big question is, how'd they do it? How did they manage to build these massive empires basically from nothing? So here's how we're going to break it down today. We'll start with how the mainframe's cracks first appeared, then we'll meet software's first titans. After that, it's the battle for the network, followed by an era I'm calling an empire of acquisitions. And finally, we'll look at the legacy of these big four. All right, let's jump in.
Okay, so let's set the stage. Our story kicks off in an era that was completely dominated by one single giant. And the very idea of what monitoring even meant, well, that was about to get turned completely upside down.
You have to understand, before the 80s, IT monitoring was, well, a physical job. I'm not kidding. Picture this. Technicians are literally standing there watching panels of blinking lights on these IBM mainframes that were the size of a city block. And if something broke, you only found out after the whole system crashed. Then you'd have to dig through these super cryptic logs on an old green-on-black screen. The entire process was reactive. You were always cleaning up a mess.
And then, boom, everything changed. There was this one single government mandate back in 1969 that forced IBM to do something called unbundling. Basically, they had to start selling their hardware separately from their software. And this one decision completely shattered IBM's monopoly. It literally created the independent software market overnight. All of a sudden, for the very first time, little startups had a real shot at building software that was, well, frankly, just better than what IBM was offering.
So, you've got this brand new market, and who steps in? The first two titans of our story. These were entrepreneurs who saw those cracks forming in IBM's armor, and they decided, hey, we're going to exploit those.
So over in New York, you had this guy Charles Wang. He founded a company called Computer Associates, or CA, and their mission was super simple. Just build tools that did basic mainframe stuff better than IBM's own tools. Their first big hit was a product called CA Sort, and it did just that. Now down in Houston, you had a totally different story. 3 former engineers from Shell Oil started BMC Software. Their goal? To tackle a different problem, how to squeeze way more performance out of IBM's really slow database software.
And if you look here, you can really see how different their DNA was, right from the get-go. Just check out that strategy row. CA, from day one, their game was aggressive M&A. Just grow by buying other companies. BMC, on the other hand, they started with a total focus on pure engineering. They wanted to grow organically, long before they even thought about buying anybody else. These were 2 fundamentally different playbooks for building an empire.
But the action wasn't just in the mainframe room anymore. A whole new frontier was opening up, the corporate network. We're talking this sprawling, super complicated, and exploding web of connections. And that was the next big prize everyone wanted to win.
And to win this new fight, the tech itself had to evolve, big time. So we went from just looking at logs after a crash to something called real-time polling using a protocol called SNMP. Think of it like this. It basically just lets you ping a device and ask, hey, you okay right now? But the real game changer, the final leap, was proactive agents. These were smart little pieces of software that would actually live on each device and would only send an alert when a problem was about to happen. That's a huge difference.
And this is the moment our third giant, Hewlett-Packard, steps onto the stage. Now remember, HP wasn't a software company. They made hardware, printers, computers, that kind of thing. But then they released something called HP OpenView, and it was a total revolution. Using that SNMP protocol, OpenView could automatically find every single device on the network and draw you a map of it. Think about that. For the very first time, you could actually see your entire IT infrastructure all on one screen. Mind-blowing for the time.
Of course, HP wasn't alone in this. Sun Microsystems had its own powerful rival called Sun Net Manager, and their strategies were polar opposites. Sun, they went after the really niche, higher-performance customers like big telecom companies. HP, on the other hand, targeted, well, everyone in the corporate world. And that much broader, more inclusive strategy, that's exactly why OpenView ended up winning the war and became the standard for pretty much everyone.
But you know what's interesting? The next really huge leap forward didn't come from any of these giants. Nope, it was forged in the heat of actual battle. And this quote right here, it just shows you how incredibly high the stakes really were. So get this. This company was called Banyan Vines, and they had a technology called Street Talk that was, and I'm not exaggerating, decades ahead of its time. It let any user find any resource, a printer, a file, anything, anywhere on a global network. And here's the wild part. Back in 1991, the U.S. Marine Corps actually used it to run their battlefield communications during the Gulf War. It was the ultimate stress test, and it proved just how powerful this new kind of global distributed computing could be.
Okay, so this brings us to the next big phase of our story. The technological groundwork has been laid. Now, the race was on to build empires. And this time it wasn't just about writing the best code. It was about contracts, hostile takeovers, and corporate warfare.
And absolutely no one played this game better, or frankly more ruthlessly, than Computer Associates. Just look at this timeline. It shows you their absolutely relentless pace. They go public and then immediately just start gobbling up competitors. They became only the second software company in history after Microsoft to hit $1 billion in revenue. And their playbook? It was simple, but it was brutal. Buy a company, and you own their customers. End of story. And then came the big one, the whale. In 1995, CA shelled out $1.78 billion for its rival, Legend Corporation. Now, to put that in perspective, at the time, that was the biggest acquisition in the entire history of the software industry. This was a deal that sent shockwaves through the whole market. Yeah, the deal was so huge that it actually triggered a major antitrust case. The government got involved, worried that CA was becoming a monopoly. So they forced CA to license some of its key technology to a competitor. But it was a total bust. It just didn't work. The whole thing was a failure, which really just shows you how much power and control CA had already piled up. So while CA is on the attack playing offense, the old giant, IBM, is stuck playing defense. And they were getting crushed. I mean, they were just bleeding money, lost $8 billion in 1993 alone. So to save their own skin, they bought a company called Tivoli. And here's the best part, the perfect irony. Tivoli was founded by a bunch of ex-IBMers. They literally left IBM to go build the exact kind of open multi-vendor management tool that IBM itself had failed to create. And with that acquisition, the Big Four was officially complete.
So let's step back. What did this all mean in the end? What was the real, lasting impact of this 2-decade-long war for control over enterprise IT?
Well, for one, the reign of the Big Four established this dominant architectural idea called the manager of managers. Think of it this way. The holy grail for everyone was to have one central platform, a single pane of glass, where you could see and manage absolutely everything. HP OpenView was the classic example of this. One central dashboard that could plug into all these other little specialized tools.
But maybe their most profound legacy? It wasn't even about the technology itself. It was about a shift in perspective. They moved the entire conversation up the stack. We stopped asking simple questions like, is the router down, and started asking much more important questions, like, is the business service running slow? It was no longer about a piece of broken hardware. It was about a slow Oracle transaction that was actively costing the company money. And that conceptual leap, it laid the groundwork for basically everything that's come since.
And yet, here's the twist. Their greatest strength, that M&A strategy, it also became their greatest weakness. All those relentless acquisitions that built their empires, they also created these massive, bloated, and unbelievably complex software suites. They weren't elegant, integrated products anymore. They were just these disjointed collections of different tools all mashed together, and they were a total nightmare to integrate and actually use.
Which brings us to one last, pretty ironic question to leave you with. In their huge quest to conquer complexity, did the Big Four just accidentally create an even bigger, more complicated monster? It's this cycle we see over and over and over again in tech, right? Where every brilliant solution ends up planting the seeds for the next big problem. Thanks for joining me for this one.